Board, and I'll be chairing this committee this afternoon. We're in the so-called part 1 of the Primary Care Commissioning Committee, which is the meeting held in public. So I want to welcome members of the public to this meeting as well. You will have seen we have a full agenda today with appropriate time allocated for Toftswood Medical Centre, and I'll come to that fairly shortly. I don't have any chair's actions to report on, so I'll move to item 2 on the agenda, which is apologies for absence. We've received apologies from voting member Ian Wake, but today we have in total 3 voting members or the nominated deputies, so we are quorum for decision making. Can I ask at this point, which you are all doing, put yourselves on mute? I think that helps proceedings, but when there's an opportunity for you to contribute, you can go off mute. Declarations of interest. You will have seen on the agenda, Bill Board has a conflict for item 7. I'll come to that when we come to that agenda item, and Sarah Buchan for item 10. And again, when we reach that agenda item, I'll say a bit more about that. I missed other apologies for absence. So Fiona Feedham is not here, Jason Stokes, Stephen Course, Tricia Dorsey, but Stephen Course and Tricia Dorsey have sent their nominated deputy. I think that's all that was in apologies. Sarah, did I miss anything? Anyone from the apologies list?
No, I've got no further to add.
Yeah. Thank you. That takes us to the minutes of the last meeting. As per usual, I take them in their entirety. So does anyone have a comment as to accuracy of those minutes? No, many thanks, Sarah. The action log shows like they're all complete. Sadie, is there anything you want to highlight from this on the action log?
Thank you, Hein. Just hoping that members are happy with the updates we've provided, and to note that the final action 0194, we're suggesting to add that to the forward plan rather than have it sitting on the action log, so that we can bring that at an appropriate point in the future.
Yeah, seems a pragmatic way to deal with it. That's fine. Talking about forward planner, we stay with you, Sadie, for that.
Thank you.
So
you'll see a number of items are highlighted there, and largely what we've tried to do is move the item to a month where it would align with our normal end of year reporting or the annual reporting. So I hope that's okay. With regards to the contract assurance framework, this is now going through the delivery groups. We weren't bringing it, we weren't going to bring it here unless we are requested to. But otherwise, I think everything on there is here today.
Okay, looks fine. I already want to flag at this stage the next date shows as 11th of March 2025, but we are looking for another date. So watch this space. Hopefully before long we can advise everyone what the other date is. That takes us to item 6, the risk register. Sadie, can you introduce that?
Yes, of course. Thank you. So you'll see on the summary page on 22 of the pack that we've had no changes in scoring this time. You'll also see PC6 on there, but as previously approved, that is now monitored through the general practice and community pharmacy delivery group, so not brought to you today. I guess I would only focus today, I'm very conscious of time, on the overall primary care resilience and transformation risk, which forms part of the board assurance framework and aligns with the joint forward plan. you can see the latest update on there. The thing that is missing, which we will ensure is added in, is something that's going to be affecting all of our primary care contractors, and that is the concern about the national insurance employers' contributions following the budget announcement recently. We are yet to have any update from NHS England on that and what may or may not be taken into account in our future allocations. So we're very well aware that the representative bodies for all primary care contractor groups are taking this up through their national routes as well. But as yet, we have no news, no update to offer, but we'll obviously be monitoring any progress closely.
Thank you, Sadie. I'll open up for questions or comments for committee members, but one question I had is around general practice resilience. Any update on collective action and how it's being monitored by the ICB, I guess?
Yeah, of course. So we've been regularly meeting. We have a weekly get together, which is coordinated by our operational resilience function within the ICB, and it brings together people from across all directorates. So we have that every week, and there's also a weekly regional meeting where ICBs come together and discuss any national updates and any local updates. As yet, the greatest impact for us appears to be in a change from using referral forms into referral letters, which was one of the actions proposed as part of the campaign. But we also regularly discuss soft intelligence with local practices and in our regular meetings with the local medical committee.
Yeah, thanks, Sadie. Nick.
Yeah, just a couple of minor points, Hein. The first one is regarding dentistry, primary care dentistry. I wonder if we're placing enough emphasis on specialist orthodontics in primary care, because that is quite a vulnerable, fragile area for those specialist practitioners. And I noticed it's not really included at all as part of the risk register in primary care. I just wondered, and dental primary care, I just wondered if that was something that the team were keeping an eye on. It certainly, I know work's being done on that, but I just flagged that up. I don't want to engage in long discussion about it. The second thing is relating to the primary care resilience. It says that CQC activity is more or less focused on private dental practices rather than NHS practices. I'm not entirely sure that's correct. Certainly discussions with the CQC I have seem to highlight those practices that need to be addressed as the ones that haven't been seen for 10 years or are flagging up risks. But I don't know that they're specifically featuring or focusing on private practices. Certainly that's not the information I've had. It's only a minor thing, but I thought it might be important that members were aware.
Thanks, Nick. I suggest Fiona, who's not here today, is apprised of your points and can consider them. Thanks for raising those, Nick. Lisa.
Yes, thank you. I've just got a couple of points. Excuse me. Practices are reporting increased sickness and poor well-being of staff across all of Norfolk and Waveney, and obviously this is having a severe impact on resilience, and practices actually having to take measures against that. It's also affecting retention and recruitment of staff in general practice. There is also a number of vacant roles in general practices that are currently not being recruited to. Like Sadie said, a lot of that is due to the autumn statement and the unknowns around that, which is further putting additional pressures. And also, we are very concerned that we're only now at the start of the winter pressures, and there is already a marked difference in practices report in amber and red too. And we're very aware that we understand that there is no winter pressures funding, but this is only the start of the season. This is a grave concern.
Thank you, Lisa, for pointing attention to the resilience risk in very vivid terms. And I'm sure, well, it's being captured in the minutes, but hopefully Sadie can help inform an update of the risk next time around. If there's no further questions, I think with those comments, we approve the risk register as it stands, but I think there's some follow-up items, as you heard from the speakers. Good. That takes us to item 7, Toftwood Medical Centre, and I hope you can see that in the agenda we've allocated appropriate time for this item. So again, I want to welcome members of the public who've dialed in for this item. I don't see Bill Bort on the list, but in case he joins, he has highlighted an interest for this agenda item. It's a meeting in public, so of course he can attend, but I have asked that Bill does not participate in the discussion. As you've hopefully seen from the agenda, we follow a format for this session that we've applied successfully in another matter, and I'll just walk you through this. So I will shortly invite Sadie Parker, Director of Primary Care for the ICB, to guide us through the papers that we've received, and I will allow a good time to do that, so some 10 to 15 minutes, and I would ask committee members to wait with their questions. After that, then there's an opportunity for those on the committee to ask clarification questions. And after that, there's an opportunity for members of the public to ask clarification questions. And please note that over the last few days, we have received already quite a few questions in writing. And I think I see one or two who have posed questions, so I can call them forward. But to make it clear to everyone, all those questions will be put on the website and answers will be provided on the website as well. But of course, we'll engage on those in the meeting as well. After that, the committee may further reflect on the point, but I am keen as chair to, at the end of it, come to a point where the committee can make a decision, and I'm looking at the voting members in particular there. I will keep an eye on the time as we work through this important agenda item. And before I hand over to Sadie, I want to thank, on behalf of the committee, everyone who has provided input into this matter over the last couple of months, specifically including members of the public and local stakeholders. I know ICB staff have put a lot of work in it, so thank you for that. And I'm also personally grateful to the 3 practices to facilitate a visit that I and several other committee members were able to make last month to each of their premises. So I'm handing over to Sadie. Now, Sadie, thank you for a comprehensive set of documents. Grateful if you can walk us through these and highlight key considerations. So over to you, Sadie.
Thank you, Hein. So I will assume that the papers are read, but I will try and take through a summary of them. So by way of introduction, Toftwood Medical Centre is one of our smaller practices in the ICB. On the 1st of October, it was recorded as having 4,099 registered patients, although all practices list sizes fluctuate and we measure them quarterly. Toftwood is one of 7 APMS contracts that we have in Norfolk and Waveney. We have 105 GP practices, and all but 7 of them are contracts in perpetuity. The APMS, Alternative Provider of Medical Services contract, is a time-limited contract, and it expires on the 31st of March next year. There is no contractual ability to extend that contract. So if we were to continue services at the Toftwood Medical Centre, we would need to procure a replacement contract. The premises at Toftwood are too small for the size of the registered list. There are 2 consulting rooms downstairs and another one upstairs, which makes it operationally very difficult for the practice staff to manage patients who may struggle to get upstairs. They have to be really careful to try and book people into the right rooms, which makes it quite difficult for staff. There isn't a lease in place. The previous one expired in 2010. And predecessor organisations and the ICB from its inception in April 2020 have made many attempts to consider relocating the practice to a more suitable interim premises and to extend it. The last extension, which was a Portakabin, having rotted through. Unfortunately, those attempts have not been successful, and sites that we have identified and shortlisted have either proven to be unsuitable or have fallen through due to them becoming unavailable. We also failed to agree to extend the building with the owner of the site. So over the last couple of years, we've been having ongoing discussions with the partnership that runs the practice as well to look at what alternative options might be available to us. And unfortunately, we have found it very difficult through all of those discussions to reach any alternative arrangement for the practice. Our aim is to secure stable and resilient services for the population of Toftwood, for the registered population, and we want those to be in suitable facilities. Therefore, we reached a point where we felt we had no other option but to propose to close the Toftwood Medical Centre and automatically transfer patients to one of Orchard or Theatre Royal surgeries, which are about 1.5 miles away from Toftwood practice. We believe this was the best way to ensure people could be cared for in appropriate facilities, to ensure that staff could work in appropriate facilities, and to ensure that nobody was left without GP registration. So as Hein said, we went out to public consultation from the 10th of October to the 21st of November, and we're very grateful for all those people who have participated in that process. We wanted to understand what the impact of the proposal would be on people registered with Toftwood Medical Centre if the proposal was agreed. We also asked if there were any alternative options that we hadn't considered or identified. We ran a survey and provided that in alternative formats. We held 2 drop-in sessions and a public meeting, and we held those at different times of the day to try and make ourselves available to people. We then used the consultation. The document is in the pack, and we used the outcomes, and the outcomes report is in the pack, to help us finish and revise our draft equality impact assessment. And we had some really helpful feedback through the consultation, which enabled us to do that. And as a result, we've come up with some proposed actions should the recommendation be approved. In considering the proposal, and you'll see throughout the paper, we've made reference to the ICB's statutory duties. And we also consider NHS England's statutory duties when we do this, because we are delegated to undertake this work on their behalf. We also made reference to the NHS England Primary Medical Services Policy Guidance Manual, and we used the branch surgery process in the absence of specific guidance around this particular proposal. We analysed the data in the health profile, and what we could see was that the data around the health profile of the population registered with the Toftwood Medical Centre was very similar to the Norfolk and Waveney average. And the Norfolk and Waveney average has an older population and slightly lower deprivation levels than we might see in England as a whole. We also saw that patients tend to use services less than we might expect for the age profile, and there are slightly lower levels of frailty. For all three practices in Dereham, emergency admissions are also below or slightly below the Norfolk and Waveney average, which provides us with relative confidence that health need hasn't changed over time, and that services are generally meeting the needs of the local population. During the consultation, we heard that people who responded were worried about access, and they were worried about the quality of care. They were also worried about travelling and adjusting from a small surgery to a larger one. We've therefore included consideration of these points within the paper. All three practices, when you look at the GP patient survey, which is sent at random, all three practices have good patient satisfaction levels with the overall experience of their surgery. When looking at quality of care, all three practices operate to the same contractual requirements for the services that they provide, and all three have been rated overall as good by the Care Quality Commission. It has been raised that Theatre Royal Surgery, when they were inspected 6 years ago in October 2018, that they were rated responsive, requires improvement for the responsive domain. The CQC inspection report references that the practice were actively recruiting staff at the time, and they have indeed managed to do that since then. Since the CQC inspection, Theatre Royal Surgery as well as Orchard Surgery have both had the new cloud telephony systems installed, which provides them with much greater functionality, and they're able to be much more responsive to patients calling in. The other areas that were raised as concerns were about capacity, both premises capacity and workforce. On the premises front, the Orchard Surgery was already deemed as having sufficient capacity to grow and to accommodate the Toftwood Medical Centre patients should the recommendation be approved. In addition to that, there have been some internal modifications made in the last couple of months, and there are now 3 additional consulting rooms over and above what was already there. Theatre Royal Surgery is more constrained for space, and they are working with our primary care estates team to plan to add a modular extension to their premises. That is unlikely to be on site on the 1st of April. However, the practice is working with the estates team to look at interim solutions and is undertaking some site visits at the current time. In the longer term, in 5 to 10 years, because we recognise that Dereham is a growing market town and will be subject to the same increased housing targets as all other planning authorities. In the longer term, in 5 to 10 years, we will be working with the council and with the Dereham Action Planning Group to look at what provision needs to be for Dereham for the future. We were also asked why we hadn't managed to resolve the issues and why the lease had been left after it had expired in 2010. There has been a lot of work in this space over the years, and we have attempted to resolve that. We were really pleased to join 2 meetings that George Freeman, the local MP, facilitated between the ICB and the landlord, and local councillors were also in attendance at those meetings. We had 5 issues on the premises which we needed to resolve in order to be able to consider a different recommendation for today. We did make progress in those meetings and we managed to resolve 2 of those issues. However, we made insufficient progress on the other 3, which is why officers couldn't be confident enough to recommend a different option to the committee. We were also asked to pause by local councillors to allow further discussions and further negotiations to take place. As I've already explained, we're unable to pause the contract. It does expire at the end of March, and we do need to go through a process to identify another provider if the recommendation is not approved. However, notwithstanding that, we have had discussions with potential providers to see if we were able to resolve the premises issues. Would they consider working with us to run services from the building from the 1st of April next year? And unfortunately, we were unable to identify an interim provider. Throughout all of this time, we have met very regularly with both Toftwood Medical Centre and Orchard and Theatre Royal surgeries together, and we've been considering the themes of the feedback as the consultation has been live and post the consultation, and we've been working together on potential plans which can then be put into place if a decision is made. Those meetings will continue, and depending on the outcome of today, if the recommendation is approved, those meetings will continue both up to and beyond any mobilisation date. In the paper, I undertook to verbally update on the Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee we attended last week at Norfolk County Council. The meeting was, we're very grateful to the committee for putting that single item meeting in place for us to discuss the health, the proposals. 2 members of the public attended and were able to ask questions, and they were broadly in line with the consultation feedback that we have provided. And we've also received public questions in a similar vein today. We had many questions which we responded to, and the committee at the end concluded and agreed a proposal that was made from one of the councillors and seconded that they, if the decision is made today to agree the closure of the Toftwood Medical Centre, that they would ask the Secretary of State to call in the decision. So if I move to the recommendation in the paper and just spend a little bit of time on that, and of course I'm very happy to answer any further questions. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through the paper, it's a long one. So today we are asking members to consider the report and its contents, and to approve a recommendation to close the Toftwood Medical Centre when the contract expires on the 31st of March. If the recommendation is approved, we would continue to work closely with all three of the surgeries and with the leadership of the primary care network, with a focus on mobilising transition plans, including workforce and recruitment, and of course in progressing a modular extension for the Theatre Royal surgery. We would seek to inform Toftwood medical patients as soon as possible, and certainly this week, on the outcome of the decision today, and that will be whatever decision is made. Communications will be sent to registered patients of Toftwood Medical Centre. We would work with Primary Care Support England to plan the automatic change in the registration of patients, and patients will receive communication directly from Primary Care Support England in due course to inform them of what will happen and who they would be registered with. We heard earlier Lisa mentioned about in general practices are struggling with resilience and health and well-being within staff, and this is no different in Dereham practices, but we would be looking to make health and well-being support available to all staff affected in the Toftwood Medical Centre, and we would be working with both practices to consider how we can move forward with the actions highlighted in the Equality Impact Assessment. The three practices are currently in discussions about the staff at Toftwood Medical Centre and how TUPE regulations will apply, with the aim of moving staff from Toftwood Medical Centre to work in the other two areas where it's appropriate to do so. In addition, we would provide reasonable notice to the landlord and will continue to reimburse rental payments until the building is handed back if the decision is made. We would enable sufficient time to both the current provider and our digital team to enable the ICB and practice-owned assets to be removed from the building before it is handed back. So I think that's about 15 minutes. I hope that's okay, Hein, and of course I'm very happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sadie. I'll come to Karen and James in a moment. Maybe I can squeeze one question in myself. So as we've seen, and I think it was highlighted in HOSC as well, and we've received some questions from the public in writing. Concerns have been raised that the consultation itself was not done properly, correctly, words to that effect. How do you respond to that? And I think I've seen Chris Williams, our head of comms and engagement in the ICB, on the call. So maybe Chris, you've been close to this. Is that a question you could take on?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got a few things I think would be helpful to say. I mean, I think it's probably worth being clear that we obviously hadn't made a decision about the future of Toftwood Medical Centre before we launched the consultation. As set out in the consultation document, we wanted to hear people's ideas before the committee made a decision in order to see if there were other suggestions we'd not considered. And we did run the consultation with an open mind, and as Sadie has said, we did engage with the local MP and the landlady in discussions about potential solutions even during the consultation period. We really did try to see if there was a different solution. I would say that as part of the consultation, we also asked people about the potential impact of the proposal on patients and carers, and we asked this to help ensure the committee had the information it needs to make an informed decision about whether or not to go ahead with the proposal. I'd say that whenever we run public consultation, we always try to give people sufficient information and to make the information we provide clear, at the same time trying to avoid overcomplicating what we write so that people are not put off from responding. and sharing their views. You know, we couldn't and we don't expect members of the public to be experts in the NHS, but they are experts in their own health and care, and they can help us understand the potential impact of a proposal based on their own experiences and views. So, you know, we're grateful to everyone who did share their experiences.
Thank you, Chris.
I was just going to say one other thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, there was some comments made about, I guess, the accessibility of the consultation and ensuring we heard from a wide range of people. So it's helpful to state some of the steps we took to make sure the consultation was accessible to different groups of people. So we had, you know, as kind of Sadie indicated, we had a range of different methods to make people aware of the consultation. So text messages, letters, social media posts, information on our website, press releases, radio interviews, posters in the practices. We also gave people, you know, a variety of ways to respond and to ask questions. So there was the online survey, there was a paper survey, which could either be collected from the practices or requested by emailing or calling the ICB. We also actually posted some direct to some patients. We attended the 3 in-person events that Sadie mentioned, which, yes, could be booked online or by calling the ICB. And we received emails and telephone calls with all sorts of questions during the consultation period. And I would say that we didn't just hear directly from patients, we also received responses from people supporting others to respond to the consultation as well, helping those who couldn't perhaps respond on their own. And finally, I would just say prior to launching the consultation, we did speak to the chair of the Norfolk Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee about the consultation process and the timescales, and they were content with our approach.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Karen, then James.
Thank you, Hein, and thank you, Sadie. That was a really clear summary of the paper, and it was most helpful to understand how we find ourselves in this position. I have one question, which is around the capacity. You mentioned that Theatre Royal are more constrained. Are they able to manage, should the decision be made to close Toftwood, would they be able to manage the incoming flow of the local population until they can expand their premises? They would be able to. I can see you nodding. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Karen. It is something that we have discussed directly with Theatre Royal Surgery. So naturally they are disappointed that it's unlikely that the modular extension would be in place for the 1st of April. But they have been working on potential contingency plans to manage in the short term. So, for example, they are undertaking site visits to look at whether there are alternative sites that they can temporarily provide services from, whether that be admin or clinical. And they also, of course, have the option to extend their opening hours in the very short term to allow them to provide additional clinics that way as well. But they have said to us that they would be able to accommodate it in the short term if they had to.
Thank you, Sadie.
Thank you. James.
So my question is also around Theatre Royal and that. So the modular build that's proposed to be built, has the governance been completed around that? Has that been officially signed off, so we know that will be in place, or is that still in process at the moment?
It's still in process, James. We had it took quite a lot of time to get the plans through from the provider of the modular building. So the estates team is now working with the practice to go through all the relevant governance process around that. And of course, as has been pointed out through the consultation and the questions that the ICB has received, there is still planning permission to apply for, and we know that that takes a set amount of time. And of course, you know, we can't assume that will definitely be approved, although we very much hope it will. And I know that estates colleagues will be engaging with the council on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further hands. I have another question, and I think it goes to the equality impact assessment. So one of the consultation feedback that got quite a few votes, if I can put it like that, was concern about negative impact on patient experience and health outcomes. In the document, the conclusion is we have no reason to believe the quality of services will be impacted by the closure of Toftwood Medical Center. And what I learned reading through it is that, helped, I guess, by the consultation feedback, you've been able to update sort of the plans reflected in quality impact statement. But I guess my question therefore is can you provide comfort that those negative impact on patient experience will be carefully managed and minimized, etc.? I'm grateful if you can say something to that point, Sadie.
Thank you, Hein. Yeah, so I think we heard largely it was people who were really concerned about mobility. So the frail elderly, for example, or people with disabilities, and also people with perhaps hidden disabilities, neurodiversity, for example. So we know that people were really concerned about, and this won't apply to all frail elderly people living in Toftwood, because of course Toftwood is quite big as well. So those who could perhaps walk in independently because they lived very closely to the Toftwood Medical Centre, but wouldn't be able to do that independently if they were having to travel in to the other two. Same issue for people who have a physical disability. And then we heard from people with neurodiversity, for example, that they feel very comfortable going to a small local surgery, but we're very concerned about the change to a larger, busier surgery. So we have been discussing those themes in meetings that we've had as three practices and with the primary care network. So we've been thinking about how we can work with Toftwood Medical Centre so that we can identify who these people are in the first place, and then how we can reach out and offer them support. So whether that be, for example, the practices are considering offering an open morning once patients know where they will be registered, so that patients can come and familiarise themselves with the surgery. We've also considered whether we can provide patients, where possible, appointments at quieter times, whether that be in the enhanced access slots when the surgery isn't as busy. We've also been talking about using the primary care network additional role staff, so care coordinators, health and wellbeing coaches, social prescribers, to think about how we might be able to provide that individual support with the change, and what support agencies might be in place to support people to access services. So all of that has been discussed through the weekly meetings that we've been having, so that we can put those actions into place should a decision be made to close the surgery.
Thank you, Sadie. Next, if Naomi from Norfolk and Waveney LMC. Naomi.
Hi, yeah, thank you, and thank you, Sadie, for that summary. Just really building on your comment, Hein, but looking at this more from the practice perspective, and really just seeking assurances from the ICB that should the decision be made to close Toftwood, that the utmost priority will be given to assuring that Orchard and Theatre Royal will be provided with all the support to support them in the transition, because it cannot be underestimated the workload involved in this level of patients being allocated to a practice in one go, and the practices may well require some financial or resource support, and really want to seek your assurances that the ICB will be able to provide that should it be needed by the practices. And also, should the APMS contract cease, that the funding released from the APMS contract will be reinvested back into general practice services. Thank you for your question, Naomi. So you want to respond to it?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Naomi. So what we've been trying to do is, as part of our planning, is to identify the actions that we would need to be taking, and then we will also be able to then think about what resources we need to do that, what resources are already in place. Naomi will be aware of the additional governance that we have in place in the ICB for approval of funding decisions. And so I think once the decision has been made, the plan is to work with the 3 practices to really be able to finalise those plans so that we can apply for any additional funding that we might need. So I can't provide Naomi with that guarantee at this meeting because we have those additional governance processes to go through if we're seeking to invest funding into the practices. But it is a process that we will be going through.
Thank you. See no further hands. I'll do a last question from myself, and you touched upon it, Sadie, is many people in the consultation commented on Dereham is a growing market town. How can you cope with all of this with a look to the future? So I know the proposal is in a way focusing on the here and now, but was also a lot of attention asked around the longer term. Could you say a bit more how that work might develop? I've seen you're joining an action planning group as the ICB, but any other thoughts on this?
Yes, thank you. And I know Paul Hyam's on the call, who's our Associate Director of Estates, so he may wish to add to what I'm saying. Yeah. I think there have been concerns expressed about whether the additional 4,000 patients can be managed within the practices, as well as the additional housing growth that is planned for Dereham in the coming years. And so in terms of the short term, so the next 5 years, the short to medium term, we feel that with the current capacity in orchard surgery, the physical capacity, and with the planned capacity in Theatre Royal, that the short to medium term will be manageable, but the longer term, i.e. the next 5 to 10 years, when we know that what the housing targets and the timelines are going to be, then we can consider with the practices what future capacity might need to look like. And we will be joining the Dereham Town Action Group, which I believe is facilitated by George Freeman, so that we can be party to those discussions and those plans and build them into our future plans as well.
Thank you. And Paul, I've seen you are on the line. Is there anything you want to add from your perspective on this?
I think from my perspective, Hein, we can't do this on our own. In terms of a long-term plan, it's not the ICB's role to dictate what that primary care provision should look like for the town. We need to work with the primary care network to scope the size of the building needed, who would be delivering services from there, and the best location. As part of the feedback we've received already for the booth, there's quite mixed views on the best place for a new build facility. Quite a lot of comments suggesting why don't you build a new build on the site of the existing Dereham Hospital site, which is a possibility. But then an equal number of you saying we still need something on the south side of Dereham, which again makes sense as well. So when we're looking at this, we need to plan with the PCN, come up with a range of site options across Dereham that are appropriately sized, and go through that business case process, which will take time. So 5 to 10 years is a realistic time frame to get a new build premises in place.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. Karen.
Thanks so much. It's sort of considering what Paul has just said, and Sadie, can you just confirm, Sadie, that the population needs have been assessed in terms of the age demography, because it may change with the housing build, and obviously it's important you're part of those conversations. But in the imminent or potential changes that may occur if Toftwood closes, that the health population needs have been looked at for this particular area.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, so the hopefully you'll have seen the health profile in the papers, and we can see kind of the age profile, so we know how the population is going to progress. We're also very conscious that general practice is changing, so we're moving towards the modern general practice access model, which is something that NHS England have defined for all of us. There is a desire to move to more digital approaches where it's appropriate, and we know that we're going to need to put support in around that, and also more integrated models of care with teams wrapped around populations based in the community, and seeking to address population health needs. So it will look slightly different in different parts of the patch, but certainly the local place team is very engaged with this work and has been working with us throughout, so that they will continue to be very engaged going forward in ensuring that we have that integrated approach to supporting the local population.
Thank you, Sadie.
And thanks to you and colleagues for addressing those questions. I'm going to move now to clarification questions from members of the public. I tried to scroll through earlier, and I guess 20 to 25 members of the public who've dialed in, so thank you very much for doing that. If everybody wants to ask questions, I don't think there's enough time to do that, so I will allow some pragmatism as chair to do it. But on my screen I do see Councillor Alison Webb, who now has asked questions in writing. So if okay with you, Councillor, can I start with you? I've seen the questions, but others have not. I think some of them have been addressed, maybe not to your satisfaction, but I think we've at least tried. But can I hand over to you? And I'm aiming for 4 to 5 minutes in case there's others who want to talk. So welcome, and over to you.
Thank you so much. I didn't know I was able to speak today, so this is a bonus. Thank you. Before I start, I just want to say thank you to Sadie. She's tried to work really hard with us to try and get things sorted, but I still have real concerns about the impact of the closure on our residents. I think the big one on my mind at the moment is the fact that Theatre Royal Surgery does not have the plans passed, in place, or contingency plans, which reassures me that there's going to be capacity for the transfer in April. I would have felt a lot better if the plans had been through the planning committee, or even there was a contingency plan which Sadie could say, and we've discussed it and we're going to do Saturday and Sunday opening, but it's all up in the air, and that to me is concerning. You know, and I know that with planning, there's no guarantee that you're going to get planning. What happens if next year plans are put forward and there's objections that are valid, and Reckland Council Planning Committee turns it down? Where does that leave us going forward? So that was my one big worry bead. Sorry, there was 2 things. I promised only 2. The other thing was the fact that Dereham traffic is horrendous, and the travelling from Toftwood to Dereham, where the actual surgeries are, it's log jammed quite a lot of the time, and I'm concerned about people travelling into the town and actually putting more and more congestion on our roads. That's my 2 main worries at the moment. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also want to invite other members of the public. If you have questions, you can raise the hand on the Teams at the top of the screen. At least it's on top of my screen. Raise your hand and I'll call you. But maybe Sadie, you've heard the 2 points from the councillor. Is there anything you want to add?
Thank you. Thank you, Alison. I think for Theatre Royal Surgery, we don't have a decision yet, which is why we don't have concrete plans. But I do appreciate that the proposed modular build is slightly behind where we would want it to be. So I do accept, I completely accept your concerns. I know that Paul, who's just spoken, has been working with the practice and has been looking at contingency plans. So as well as considering alternative options, alternative consulting spaces or space for admin staff, they are also considering, you know, the worst case scenario for them, I suppose, which is extending their opening hours. But really, until we have a decision and until we know exactly where we are, the practice is not going to confirm those. But they do know that we need a solution by the 1st of April. So that will be a real focus if the decision is made today to close the surgery. That will be a real focus over the next couple of weeks for our weekly meetings, so that we do rapidly have a conclusion on those. You also mentioned the traffic issues and the congestion, and I think that that's quite a difficult one for us, but I assume that that will also be part of the Dereham Town Action Group. At least I hope it will be. We haven't been to one of those meetings yet, but we are joining that group. We do have the practices provide appointments all day, and you know, they also offer enhanced access appointments, which are outside of normal opening hours. Now, I know that's not always going to be possible if people need to be seen urgently, but where people are really concerned about travelling and traffic issues, then I'm sure the practices will be seeking to accommodate flexible appointments for those that need them within their appointment diaries.
Okay, thank you. I think the issue with Theatre Royal extension is well recognized and has a high profile, and also from my discussions with the team. Let me check if there are other members of the public who want to ask a question now. As I said, we have, I think, over 25 questions received in writing, which will go on the website and will be answered, so that's available. If not, I come to the point of decision making. So my questions to voting members in particular. Sarah, is there anything you want to?
Yeah, Alison just put her hand back up.
Oh.
Alison, can you hear me?
Oh, sorry. I missed that. Alison.
I'm so sorry. I was letting other people go first. There are other things that I just wanted to bring up, but I didn't want to hog the whole thing. So if it's right, we've had the meetings. Sadie's referred to the meetings between the landlord and the ICB, and we were getting on quite well with some of the 5 things which were brought up. I think Sadie's perception of how it was going at the end is probably a little bit different than mine, because perhaps I'm trying to resolve the issue at Toffwood. I felt there was a couple of things which were unclear with the landlord, but I felt that the landlord was putting a proposal forward which didn't seem to fit the ICB's requirement in the timescale. And I understand it's really, really important because it's a really tight timescale, but it's still really important that we actually investigate all options properly before we make a decision. And I don't want a decision made here today, which is going to make things worse for Dereham and Toffwood residents. It's really, really important. And the last thing I promise is it's the fact that I'm worried that at the moment we have Dereham Theatre Royal and we have Dereham Orchard Surgery. I have many residents who have contacted me in the last month talking about the amount of times. For instance, Orchard Surgery have sent out emails saying, please don't contact us today, we have no doctors available. This is concerning when I've got residents who have got problems that really, really want to be seen within 2 or 3 days at least, not in the next month or whatever have you. So the services at the surgeries at the moment are pushed, I'll be honest, are pushed from what we experience as Dereham residents. So it worries me that we're going to have 4,000 extra, 2,000 in each surgery who are coming in, which is going to make it worse for the residents going forward. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I'll ask Sadie to comment on it, but then I will go to decision. So maybe on the latter point, maybe can help clarify. So if the proposal is approved, say equally shared between Orchard and Theatre Royal for the sake of the argument, I would assume both would add clinical capacity to deal with those additional patients. Maybe you can, as part of your answer, can clarify that. But the first one was about the discussions with the landlord, Sadie.
Yes, thank you. And it was great that Alison could be part of those meetings. So Alison's right. The meetings were really positive, and we were very pleased to be engaged with those. And I think the 5 issues that we were discussing are the same 5 issues that had prevented us moving forwards over the last 2 to 3 years. And so I think, whilst we were able to make progress on 2 of those, the other 3 outstanding, considering that they'd been outstanding for the last 2 to 3 years, I think we felt that we couldn't be confident in making the necessary progress in the remaining couple of months, and that we were being asked to sign up to a 5-year lease on the basis of only having 2 out of the 5 matters sort of satisfactorily agreed from our point of view. So I think it is really disappointing that, considering how positive the meetings were initially, that we weren't able to make more progress. But that's why we felt unable to change the recommendation on the basis of the proposal that we were discussing. And the second point around access. So we have also seen the messages on social media locally, and as Lisa from the LMC has described, I think all practices are suffering in the same way that the wider population are, with all the sort of coughs and colds and COVID and all the other viruses that are circulating. And unfortunately, from time to time, it means that they have to limit their services to urgent appointments only. At no stage have either of the surgeries been closed, and they are required to notify us if they can't meet the terms of their contract on any occasion. We have been discussing that as well in our weekly meetings, and it isn't ideal, but unfortunately, their staff get sick, and we're seeing the same thing across all practices. I guess I would also refer back to some of my earlier comments about patient satisfaction and the GP patient survey, where both practices and Toftwood practice all, score reasonably well, and certainly above the national average and the ICB average for their overall patient satisfaction with the services that they provide. Notwithstanding that, we have heard concerns being expressed through the consultation, and we're definitely very mindful of that, and it's something that we will continue to discuss through the planning and mobilisation phase if the recommendation is supported today. And we also encourage people to share their feedback and share their concerns with the practice too. Both practices have got patient participation groups in place. They will have posters displayed on that in the building. The details will be on their websites. And they both have addresses for complaints or queries from patients. So we would really encourage that patient feedback anyway. And it's particularly important if we are going to be going through a change process going forwards.
Thank you. I'm not going to now bring it to a vote. So my questions to voting members in particular, having read, listened, heard, seen all input and discussions, including today, but also leading up to this, do you as voting members approve the proposal to close Toftwood Medical Centre when the contract expires on the 31st of March 2025, and to transfer registered patients to both Orchard and Theatre Royal surgeries? Darren and James, and that includes me. So I think 3 voting members have approved the proposal. Sadie, you touched upon earlier next steps if this is approved. Can you just highlight some very pragmatic aspects? When would people be notified of the decision and other next steps that you want to highlight?
Thank you, Hein. So I think the most important thing for us to do first is to inform people who are registered with Toftwood Medical Centre, and we would be aiming to do that as quickly as possible. I'm just looking at Chris to double check when that's going to happen.
So we're looking to do that for most patients today. The practice has phone numbers for the vast majority of its patients. There are a small number they don't have, so we won't be able to text them, but we will write letters to them as we did when we launched the consultation. We'll obviously also prioritise telling staff as well.
Thank you. And we've also been speaking to the practices about how we include information on their websites, social media. We'll be doing a press release as well to inform people more widely. And that's just to inform about the decision. Very practically for Toftwood patients, they will probably now want to know where their registration will be moved to. And that will be something that will take a little bit more time. That will be managed by a national organisation called Primary Care Support England, and we will be working with them to move the registration. They will be contacting patients, but it might not be for a little while, to inform them when they've done the work to look at who would be registered where. They will always keep people together in the same household if they're already registered at the same practice. And of course, in due course, patients are also able to change their registration if they're not happy with where they've been moved to, as long as they live within the catchment area of the practice where they're seeking to register. We will be moving to put into action the actions set out in the equality impact assessment, and we'll be working with all 3 practices on that. We'll also be looking at what that means in terms of resources and support that's required, and we'll be putting the appropriate applications into the governance processes around that if that's seen as being necessary. We will continue to meet weekly as 3 practices in the ICB. The workforce and training team will be looking at what health and wellbeing support is going to be most helpful for the staff at Toftwood Medical Centre, and how they can support Orchard and Theatre Royal Surgeries once they've agreed the transfer of staff as appropriate from Toftwood Medical Centre. They'll be supporting them with any further recruitment and training that they might need. We'll obviously also be engaging with the landlord around the transfer of the building in due course.
Thank you, Sadie. That concludes agenda item 7. I think we've taken a bit more than planned, but I think it's been a very good discussion. So many thanks for everyone who has contributed. Whilst it's not on the agenda, I'm going to take a 5-minute break for everyone now. So let's reconvene at 2:46. For those members of the public, you can stay on, but we fully understand if you want to dial off, and we'll reconvene in 5 minutes with the meeting. See you soon.